morning and welcome to the Free From Festival, Christmas Festival. It might feel early to be feeling festive, but actually we say it's never too early to feel festive. And especially if you are free from, you kind of might need to think about it in advance and get stocked up and start thinking about ideas for what you're going to do over the festive period and maybe some little projects that you might like to get going. And first up, we've got lovely Ali Walsh, and she's going to be talking all about what to do if you need to avoid gluten and dairy, and especially if you're dreading Christmas. She's a celiac expert, and she's going to talk you through your holiday season and with lots of recipe ideas and practical things to get you set for the season. And you have to listen very carefully because she has got a special offer coming up.
Thanks so much, Naomi. That's a lovely introduction. I hope you can see me here. My name is indeed Ali Walsh, and I am the founder of Life on a Rice Cake, because at one point in my life, I went down to eating just rice cakes. That was not a pleasant time in my life. It was fortunately over 20 years ago now, and since then I have learned to eat things that are gluten-free, that do not irritate my gut. And I am going to be presenting today about not only gluten-free, but dairy-free, just in case you need to avoid both gluten and dairy this Christmas. Now, Naomi said that earlier that Christmas couldn't possibly be upon us yet, but indeed, 4 weeks from now, we will be sitting down to a table with turkey or vegan equivalent, if that's the way that you would like to go. And I have got so much to share with you today. So if you're feeling at all nervous or just feeling like you're not in the Christmas spirit, I promise you by the end of today's session, you will be bursting with ideas for what you can do this Christmas. So let's start with the dreaded C word. No, not Christmas, because obviously we're going to be talking about Christmas. I'm talking about COVID. We don't yet know what the tiers will mean, but what I am going to assume today for my speech is that we are going to have a normal Christmas as possible, i.e. that people are going to be able to come over to your home, or you are going to be able to visit somebody else's home. And for the purpose of today's speech, that's really important, because I'm going to be talking about when you're in other people's kitchens or when you've got somebody else cooking, which can instill fear in all of us, let's face it. I actually can't remember my first gluten-free Christmas, and I know that sounds odd, but I haven't yet been diagnosed with celiac disease. And if you're in a similar position, you may be wondering, can I actually eat gluten? I don't know yet. And what happened to me was I'd had a positive blood test, but in those days when dinosaurs roamed, I had to wait 9 months for my endoscopy to prove by biopsy that I actually had celiac disease. I've heard similar tales from other celiacs or celiacs who've only just been diagnosed, basically that they're having to wait ages because of the issues with COVID. And what I would say is, if you know it's going to be months and months and months before you get your endoscopy, then it's probably better to cut out gluten now. That said, you do have to spend 6 weeks prior to your endoscopy eating gluten so that, and this is really annoying, the villi will do their thing and shrivel to stubs, which is horrible, and basically just prove that you are celiac. So bear that in mind when you're thinking about Christmas. But for the purpose of today, let's assume that you're totally, definitely gluten-free and you're also avoiding dairy. And let's begin with if you're going to be in somebody else's kitchen. Now, you probably know that person quite well, and you probably know what they're like to be cooked for. And you need to think very carefully, can you trust this person? Is this person the sort of person who will accidentally take a fork that they've been stirring something with gluten in, like pasta, and then transfer it to your pasta? Are they going to do that? If they are, then you need to be super, super vigilant. If they aren't, or if they're willing to learn, then you've got some leeway. And I've got some top tips. So the first thing I would say is, let's go through the Christmas meal traditional, shall we say. Turkey, naturally gluten-free, you might think, except that I keep seeing magazines that recommend that you rub the turkey with butter. If you're dairy-free, obviously that's a bit of a nightmare. So just make sure that they are using a dairy-free margarine. There are plenty to choose from. Or, of course, they could just go down the bacon route or goose fat. So that's super easy. The next thing of the turkey, of course, is the stuffing. It is amazing what gluten-free stuffing can taste like, because actually gluten-free bread naturally often tastes a little bit stale. So you're supposed to use stale breadcrumbs for stuffing. So you actually get a really nice stuffing if you have to have gluten-free and mixed with some lovely herbs, maybe some sage and onion, bit of salt and pepper, and you can come up with the most amazing stuffing. So that is that covered. Gravy. When I grew up, my mum always made gravy with corn flour, and she didn't use stock cubes, she just used the juices from the turkey itself, and it tastes amazing. But of course, we like shortcuts, and people will shove a stock cube in, and you need to make sure that the stock cube they've used isn't one that contains wheat. And I actually met somebody who very kindly said to me that she'd gone out and bought new stock cubes. And by the way, Callow always seem to be gluten-free. Do check when you go to the supermarket, but Callow seem to be always gluten-free. And Oxo now do a gluten-free stock cube, but not all of them are, so just check. Anyway, the friend who went out to buy new stock cubes had actually put all her stock cubes together in the same little tub. And of course, there's the risk of cross-contamination there. So just be careful that the person using the stock cube has kept everything separate. So you've got the turkey, you've got the gravy, and you've got the stuffing. Roast potatoes. Oh, the number of times I've met someone who loves doing them in semolina, or they like to dust them with a bit of flour. Try, if you can, to persuade that person either to use a naturally gluten-free flour, of which there are so many these days, and I'll go into that later this afternoon when I'm doing my baking session. You can use corn flour, obviously, rice flour, or just omit the flour. You know, if you're using goose fat, or if people are vegetarian or vegan and that you're using oil, they will still taste amazing. So it's important to remember that for the potatoes. Things like sprouts, carrots, and so on, you can do the most amazing maple syrup carrots if you want. You can pan fry sprouts with bacon if you're not vegan. There are lots of ways to do all the trimmings naturally gluten-free. So that should be that taken care of. If you like a Yorkshire pudding with your Christmas dinner, and please don't look at me like that, there are lots of people who love Yorkshire puddings with their Christmas dinner. I've got an amazing recipe, and that is on my YouTube channel. And my YouTube channel is my name followed by GF, which is obviously for gluten-free. So Ali Walsh, GF, ALIWALSH, GF, and you will find that Yorkshire pudding recipe. And at one point, it was doing better than Jamie Oliver, although he did supersede me. And he's gone into the millions now, and I'm still in the thousands. But I promise you that recipe is fantastic. So you've got your Yorkshires, you've got your gravy, you've got your stuffing, you've got your turkey, and all the lovely vegetables to go with it. What about the pud? Well, I've been doing my research, and it turns out most of the supermarkets that are doing gluten-free Christmas puddings at the moment have also made them vegan. Thank you very much, dairy-free and gluten-free. And I'm going to go through with you, when I find my particular post-it that I've got that on, the different ones that you can get. The first one that's up is from Aldi. It is £2.69. That's it. For £2.69, you can have a Christmas pudding, gluten-free and vegan. If you want to be a little bit more upmarket, you can go to M&S, and they've got one that's just over £6. And if you want to be super, super special, there is one online for £20. And I can't quite see actually where I got that from, but I will find it and I will tell you. Oh no, here we are. Lily Puds. Lilly Puds, and yeah, for £20 or £19.99, you can get that posted out to you, which is especially handy if you are shielding at the moment and you can't get out. You can even get some puddings on eBay, so that's really easy to do. If you want to make your own, and I know Christine Bailey did a wonderful Christmas pud not so long ago, if you want to make your own, then something that I think is a wonderful tradition, and is definitely gluten and dairy free, is adding in, and I'm going to try and show these to you on the camera, these gorgeous little trinkets. And they're all different. So I've got a little button here. You probably know these from, you know, yesteryear. There's a lovely little horseshoe. And these are fantastic because, of course, the tradition is that you cut open your pudding and you find one of these and they all mean different things. So you've got the bachelor button, so you're going to be a bachelor for the rest of your life, or bachelorette, and so it goes on. The only thing I would say, oh, this is a terrible one. I don't know if you can see this one. This is the pig. I'm gonna see if I can make that even closer on the camera. You see that there? Ooh, camera doesn't like that. Anyway, I promise you that is actually a pig. And the pig, well, that speaks for itself. The only thing I would say, health and safety wise, is don't just shove these in, tiny as they are. I would get a piece of tin foil, wrap it round and make a big ball of it so that it's at least a good centimetre chunk so that you don't accidentally swallow that. To go with your Christmas pudding, I don't know about you, but I love brandy butter. I think it is amazing. And you can get some wonderful vegan butters out there, and you can get some different, not refined sugar, but refined sugar-free syrups. Obviously, you could go for maple syrup, you could go for agave syrup. There's one called Sweet Freedom that's really nice, and you can make your own brandy butter, putting in the ratio of brandy that you think is appropriate and whizzing it up with beaters or whatever you have to come to hand. If you want to get the muscles going, get a wooden spoon, because it takes ages, but once it's gone a really nice white butter colour, then you'll know that your brandy butter is done, and you can make that really far in advance and keep that in the fridge. The other thing that you might want with your pudding is, of course, custard. You may have noticed, if you buy the traditional powdered custard that you find in the supermarket, the majority of them are not only gluten-free, but they're also vegan. They don't contain any dairy whatsoever. You just have to choose the kind of milk that you would want to go with it. So soya milk, rice milk, coconut milk, they're just a few that you could use. And you will have not only brandy butter, but a lovely custard to go with your pud. So that is the main traditional meal, but let's back up the truck a little bit, because it is, of course, the 28th of November now, and in just a few days' time, we might be thinking of Advent calendars. Oh, I like that. Naomi's just given me she always puts a coin in too. Yes, a coin is fabulous in the hood. So Advent calendars. I don't particularly like the gluten and dairy-free chocolate advent calendars that I have tried. I don't know if Bouja Bouja are going to put one out. They haven't advertised one yet that I know of, but Bouja Bouja is the exception because they just do the most amazing chocolate. So I've got some alternatives for you if you're thinking you don't want to put up with one of those not so great chocolate advent calendars. If you want to find something behind a window, you can have a gin advent calendar. Those are available not only in the supermarkets, I saw one in Waitrose the other day, but you can buy them online. And since you've got a few days yet, you could order that today and you could have that arrive on the 1st of December. So those are a couple of ideas. Or you could do your own. You can get some little wooden ones where you could hide your own little treats behind little boxes and put them back. So that's something really special, especially if you have small children who want to find something and maybe you're not quite sure about them having some of the stuff that you find behind advent calendars, especially if you're keen on making sure it's sugar-free. So that is, we have loads of mini stockings that we fill with treats. That's another message from Naomi. Yes, that sounds fantastic, which does bring me on to the stocking, of course, because you will want to put some lovely, lovely treats in the stocking, and you may be sick of just having a tangerine in the toe. Obviously, that's gluten-free and vegan. I love a tangerine in the toe. I expect to find that along with a pound coin. I don't care what age you are. I think that's really important. So if you're looking for some edible treats to go in your stocking, there are plenty of different things that you can have. And there are two ways of doing it. So if you have just got a diagnosis and you're used to certain things and you want to have those same things, then obviously you're going to have to think, right, what is it that we normally give each other? Is it a load of chocolate coins? Is it something else? And you're going to have to search out a gluten-free equivalent. If people aren't on a new diet and they've been used to being doing gluten-free all along, then you can decide, well, I'm going to go around to the supermarkets, and the supermarkets are doing so many gorgeous gluten and dairy-free things. You'll be spoilt for choice. I noticed Jenna Farmer putting up a post today on Instagram of the number of gluten and dairy-free things that Co-op is doing. Head to their freezer section. You will get, not that you want this in your stocking, I'm moving on now, obviously. You would get profiteroles, of all things, you might, just a few years ago, you would never have expected to see a chocolate cream-filled profiterole that was gluten and dairy-free. So if you are still worried about Christmas, I'm guessing it's not because so much of the food that you can eat that I've just mentioned, it's because of the situation that you are going to find yourself in. And one of the things that we often tend to do is we tend to be fortune tellers at Christmas. We look ahead and we say, I know this is going to happen. I know that this person in my family or this friend who's going to be coming round is going to do or say something that is going to make me antagonized. And there are two ways to deal with this. You can either just roll with the punches and go on as usual, or you can change the way that you are going to respond to this person. I am going to talk about person number one is the person, the keeper-upper. Because you are special with your diet, they want to be just as special, and they will find a reason to be just as special. They might be vegetarian, for example. So I've been at Christmas dinners where I've said, oh, please don't mix the spoons because I don't want the stuffing spoon to go into, the carrots, whatever. And I've had a vegetarian pipe up and yes, and don't put the turkey spoon in the other things because I'm vegetarian. Those things, honestly, I would just have a little bingo chart in your bedroom and I would cross off all the things that you're expecting that person to say and look forward to getting a full house, because there's not really anything you can say to retort to that person that is going to make Christmas better. You just have to laugh inside and move on. If they're going to say something that is mean, then think about your natural response. My natural response is to be so shocked that someone has said something mean, is that I don't really process it until later. Your natural response might be to get angry straight away. And obviously we're trying to keep the Christmas spirit. This year especially, everyone is determined to have a good Christmas because most people have had such a rubbish year. So if you can possibly think ahead to the type of person that you think you will be and flip that on its head and be the kind of person they're not expecting, they may change as they go ahead. You're probably going to be spending more than just Christmas dinner with them. So if you're going to be there for, say, 3 days, think about how you are going to respond. So it's really easy if someone likes to press your buttons to do the mushroom cloud back, to be that person who's really angry. If you can possibly stop yourself, count to 10 inside your head and not respond the way that they kind of want you to, because hey, it's a heck of a show when you get all angry at Christmas, then that would be fantastic. So if they say something to you, and this was actually said to me once, I was told at Christmas, oh, at least you've only got celiac disease, at least it's not cancer. And that was really mean. No one we knew had cancer. It was completely out of context. It wasn't like I was sitting next to somebody who had had a cancer diagnosis and I was saying, oh, poor me. And that was just really mean. So I would say if somebody says something like that to you, you can, if you're usually nice, you can say to them, that really upsets me. Please don't upset me at Christmas, and see how they respond. If you're normally this kind of person that gets angry, then you can make a joke out of it to them and say, well, isn't it lucky that it's just me with celiac disease and not you? Because you know that the people saying these things to you wouldn't be able to go more than 2 days not eating gluten without making the world suffer for it. So just have a little think. And when you're doing your fortune telling thing, either decide, okay, that may not happen. I may be predicting something, and I've had that as well with the person who said to me, it's lucky you haven't got cancer. The next year, they actually went all out and made me a gluten-free chocolate cake. So you never know what to expect from someone. I also had someone once, they weren't very nice to me for a number of months. And I'm the kind of person that's always really smiley and so on. And I had been working with this person a number of months and they'd never been particularly nice. And one day some biscuits were offered round in the office and I said, no, thank you, I can't. And she said, why not? And I said, I have celiac disease. And the next day she came in with 4 gluten-free mince pies. And from then on, she was always really nice to me. And I think she thought I had it easy. And I think it's really easy if you're the kind of people pleaser or somebody who's always very smiley, very energetic, outgoing, to make people think that things don't affect you. And so it's really important, especially if you're trying to plan ahead for Christmas, to think, right, my needs are important. I am just as important as the person sitting next to me at the table, whether they are vegetarian or vegan or whatever it is that is special about them that means that they have to be careful for their diet. And so it's an idea to email everybody ahead and say, just a quick reminder, I can't have this, I can have this, I'd like to be able to help as much as possible. Do let me know what I can bring, etc., etc. And if you're thinking, oh, I don't want to have to bring my own food at Christmas, then think about this. If you don't trust the person who is cooking, then you need to think about, well, is it better that I do a little bit of prep for myself and be that helicopter person hovering over them when they're at the stove at Christmas, or sit back and risk having a really bad Christmas? I had a Christmas once where the day before on Christmas Eve, someone accidentally fed me some gluten. They'd been really ignorant. They'd used the same chopping board as a loaf of bread and they made my food on it. And I was so upset, but I found out straight away that they'd done it after I'd eaten my food. And so I got a pint of water and basically just chugged the whole thing down and then did another pint. And I was really lucky. I didn't get any symptoms. That said, I did spend the whole of Christmas thinking, oh, please don't let me get any symptoms. So obviously you don't want to be in that situation. And it is better to be the person where everybody rolls their eyes and goes, yes, it's definitely gluten-free, than the fool who is sitting on the loo or whatever symptoms you get from eating gluten. We won't go too much into that. So if you're planning ahead, try and make it as easy as possible on the other person, and think of all the things that I've just discussed, things like stock cubes that they might not think about, corn flour and so on. And make sure you get over the message about cross-contamination. I spoke to somebody recently who said someone had gone to so much trouble to make him, going back to these Yorkshire puds, gluten-free Yorkshire puds, and then they just put them on top of the normal Yorkshire puds. And because it was his first Christmas being celiac, he didn't feel confident enough to say, I can't have those now. So he ate one and then he was sick. So what's the point? It takes only 1/50th of a slice of bread to set off symptoms in a celiac. And if, like me, you are not a silent celiac and you have very loud symptoms, shall we say, which, as I keep labouring to people, is exactly the same as it's like giving birth. I remember as I was in the labour ward with my son nearly 5 years ago now, thinking, oh, this is a familiar pain that I'm getting here. And that's why I just never risk it. Just make sure people know that. I think sometimes people think that you might be exaggerating a bit, or that, you know, they just think, oh, you get a bit of tummy ache. And it's worse if you meet a celiac who has silent symptoms, who doesn't understand and goes, oh, I can risk it at Christmas. No, you never risk it for a biscuit. And that's why you're here today, to get lots of tips to make sure that you're empowered for Christmas. And if you're thinking, I just cannot get the message across to the relatives or the friends that are going to be cooking for you this Christmas, then get them short videos from Instagram of people like me. I'm on Instagram, same as my YouTube channel, it's Ali Walsh GF. And I come on all the time with just very quick, sometimes 15-30-second reels, talking about the main points that affect people at Christmas if they're celiac or if they need to avoid any other particular food group for a medical need. And I think that's a really, really important thing to remember. And if you drip feed people information from today, and by the time it gets to Christmas, they should have got the gist of what's important and what's not. So let's move on and let's go to the dreaded Christmas buffet. The number of times I've been to a buffet and they've got some clearly gluten-free food and they've put it on the same plate as stuff that has gluten in. You think, oh, why did you do that? If it's stuff like grapes, then you can obviously take them away and wash them, but you can't do that with all food. So I have a suggestion for you, and this is particularly good if you are going to be responsible for doing the buffet, is to do a naturally gluten-free buffet, the whole thing. I know I've paused there because I want to let that sink in, because I know there'll be lots of people jumping up and down going, it's my Christmas too, I want to eat gluten, I'm not the one who has to avoid gluten. Listen to this though, listen to my list of the number of things that you can make. And these are things that you can make at home. I'm going to go on to things that you can just buy in from the shops in a moment, because I know not everybody wants to spend hours and hours in the kitchen. I like spending time in the kitchen, but there are times obviously when we all just need takeaway. So these are naturally gluten-free and dairy-free things. The first thing is crispy potato skins. These are fantastic. You can cover them with whatever you like. You can put guacamole, salsa, you can put bacon. There are a number of different really good dairy-free cheeses at the moment, and they are so worth putting on loaded potato wedges, or skins. So those are great. Hummus and carrot sticks. That's not particularly Christmassy, but you can do a beetroot hummus to make it all, you know, as red as my jumper if you can. Most ready salted crisps are okay. If you go to Kettle Chips or Tyrrell's or most supermarket brands, if you're trying to keep costs down, they're pretty good. I know that Lidl do quite a few. And if you're looking for kiddie crisps, you can go for Pom Bears. They're naturally gluten-free and don't have dairy in. But I actually found in Aldi the other day, they've got their own teddy bear crisps at half the price. So you can seek those out if you want ones for kids. Dark chocolate fountain. What buffet is made with, you can get the when I say little chocolate fountain, you know, something that's sort of, you know, from here to here, and you can put in your own dark chocolate, enjoy doing amazing dark chocolate that is refined sugar free and obviously gluten free and dairy free, and it's just divine. And you can have that lovely swirling effect of that coming down, and then you've got three things you can put in it. Put marshmallows, you can put strawberries, or you can put pieces of honeycomb. And just check if you're buying in the honeycomb, just check that it is gluten and dairy free. I haven't found one that isn't gluten free yet, but just check, or you can make your own. And then you can do all the dipping thing, and that's just sensational. Fruit kebabs, that is a great one to make with kids. You can get a load of kebab sticks, and this can be one of those activities on the day before Christmas or whatever day it is that you want to do them. You can sit down with a load of fruit. If they shouldn't be having knives, you can chop up the fruit, and then they can put them onto the little skewers, and they can have great fun making them as colourful as possible. And you can get most fruits at this time of year. I went the other day to the supermarket and saw pineapple, mango, strawberries, blueberries, so many different things. And the colour is the important thing, just making sure you get that range of colour, feel really festive. This is one of my personal favourites, nachos. Who doesn't love nachos dripping with, and again, these vegan cheeses you can get are really pretty good. I had one with coconut in it the other day. As long as you like coconut, really good. And you can have the aforementioned guacamole that I talked about for the skins. You can have the salsa. If you like having a little bit of crispy bacon on there, that can make things really interesting. And if you want to keep it vegan, then go for a soya yogurt. Alpro Soya do a variety of different ones. The plain unsweetened one is an easy one to replace sour cream with, so that's a good one. Devils and angels on horseback. I have to say, what a treat if you get an angel. Those oysters are just to die, so that's another one to do. Okay, this is a really fun one. Again, this is one you can do with kids, and just look this up. Boiled eggs and olives made to look like penguins. So you take a black olive and you chop it up, and you can make a little hat for the boiled egg, and you can make little wings, and they are hilarious. So that is a really, really good one. Oh, I'm just being told Rebecca Smith has recommended an applewood cheddar cheese that is actually dairy-free. Wow, thank you very much, Rebecca Smith. That is one to go for. I have to say, it is worth going along the supermarket aisle and putting in a little bit of your budget to trying different cheeses. One of my favourite dairy-free cheeses was known as Cheese that I tried, at least 10 years ago. This is before all the dairy-free cheeses became famous and fashionable. And I put it into a cheesecake recipe. And I had a load of friends round, and I'd used gluten-free biscuits to make the base. These were sensational. Everyone was helping themselves. I made mini cheesecakes, and everyone was helping themselves to another cheesecake. So that's worth trying if you like cheesecake. And a magazine I was reading yesterday suggests that if you've got any leftover Christmas pud, what you can do is you can put it into a New York cheesecake recipe and have something extra festive for Boxing Day or beyond. Because let's face it, those days between Christmas and New Year, there's not much to do, especially if the weather's bad, apart from binge watch box sets, go for walks with the dog, and do a little bit of baking in the kitchen, opening your fridge and finding a vast array of food and thinking, okay, we don't want the same meal as yesterday, but what can we do today that's slightly interesting and different? And that cheesecake really seemed to go down a treat with the readers of that particular magazine. So I've talked a little bit about the buffet you can do, and there are 2 cheats you can have for a buffet if you're thinking, well, I'd like to make a sausage roll, but I don't quite know how. Just Roll pastry, gluten-free version, is also vegan, and it doesn't contain any other allergens. So if you have problems with soya, or you have problems with nuts, whatever it might be, get the Just Roll pastry. It's so easy. It's already rolled out for you, and it's fresh. And it keeps for about 10 days, so you could buy it just before Christmas, and you could still be using it in New Year. And there are a couple of things you could do with it that are really nice for the festive season. One of them, especially if you've got a vegan or you're vegan yourself, is to do some festive veg, put the Just Roll pastry on top, pop it in the oven, and come out with a lovely, lovely crispy pastry, flaky pastry bake. And there's someone telling me this is a great way to avoid loading up on sugar. Yes. Thank you, Annie. It is a very good way of avoiding loading up on sugar. And if you do have a very sweet tooth like me, some of the vegetables that you put underneath that pastry, sweet potato, fantastic, butternut squash. And I've recently discovered that if you peel and chop up a butternut squash and you pop a little bit of coarse sea salt on top, my favorite is pink Himalayan sea salt at the moment, not because of the boasted nutritional benefits, but I just think it's fun using something pink. You don't actually have to use any oil with it. You can just pop it in a roasting tin with a piece of baking parchment underneath so it doesn't weld to the tin. And it caramelizes in about 45 minutes at 190 degrees Celsius. And that is fantastic if you want something cold the next day. So you can keep it in the fridge, and then you can sprinkle it into a salad, or you can have it with your pastry because it's already baked and you can just pop it underneath. There are so many ways of doing it. So that's a really, really good tip. It also is a really good base if you want to make a nice vegan soup, because you've already got the butternut squash cooked. That caramel flavor makes and the way that it's being cooked makes the soup thicker than if you just put it into a soup as we might normally when you just boil all the veg up. The other thing I want to talk to you about is, of course, sausage rolls. And you get that gluten-free Just Roll pastry, and you can put your sausage mix in there, which you can pre-buy either from the butchers or you can just go to the supermarket. Bear in mind that most sausages traditionally contain rust, which of course is no good for celiacs. So just get the more upmarket sausage meat and check that it's definitely gluten-free. What I love about how sausages have changed over the years is that everyone seems now to be competing for the most gourmet sausage. Favorites of mine include the Black Farmer. He is just amazing. He's a hero of mine. He is brilliant. I could listen to him chat all day long, and obviously his sausages too. And then people like Debbie and Andrews, they're really good. Supermarket sausages, I tried some really good ones with apple in the other day from Sainsbury's. Those are fantastic. So it's worth trying out different sausages. And if you can't get just sausage meat per se, you can always squeeze the sausage meat out of the skin. Not that that's a pleasant thing to do, but if you can bear it. The other tip I have for instantaneous delight at Christmas is to get yourself some Bouger Bouger ice cream. They were at the Free From Food Festival the last time that we were allowed to be in real life, should we say, and they not only do chocolates, they do ice cream, and they do gluten-free waffle cones as well. They do the lot. So if you're looking for a lovely, lovely ice cream, then it is worth investing in one of them. There's Delia Smith does an amazing ice cream pudding recipe. You could easily substitute the ice cream that she recommends, which would be one that has sugar and dairy in it, for the Bouger Bouger ice cream. Oh, the Just Roll is wheat free. Yes, it is, Karen C. The Just Roll is everything free, 14 allergens free. So going back to Delia, I made this gluten-free pudding, the Christmas pudding with the ice cream in it. And somebody, it was actually my mum, I hope she doesn't mind me outing her. She normally doesn't allow herself too much of a treat, but she couldn't stop eating it. So if you use the Bouger Bouger ice cream, use the pudding that either you have made or you've bought from one of the supermarkets that I mentioned earlier, mix them together, freeze it in a nice bowl, then you've got an amazing alternative to the traditional gluten-free traditional gluten-free. Do you know, one day those words will be synonymous with one another. At the moment, traditional gluten-free is a bit of an oxymoron, but one day they will be synonymous. The traditional pudding is what I meant to say. And that is, it's just really nice if you know that somebody just doesn't like what you normally get for a Christmas dinner. If they don't like turkey and you've instead done beef, for example, if they don't like Christmas pudding and you've done this lovely ice cream Christmas pudding, or the cheesecake I mentioned, then those are different ways to do things. So going back to this buffet, if you're in control of the buffet and you do all the things that I just mentioned, I don't think anyone's going to be looking around and saying, where are the bread rolls? Who wants a bread roll at a buffet anyway? It's only a way of filling yourself up. So if you're doing something special for Christmas, I reckon those loaded potato skins, getting those nachos out, angels on horseback, that's going to be a fantastic buffet. If people do insist on having gluten at the buffet, just elbow everybody out and you are first in the queue, and you load up your plate and you don't go back for more, because you don't know if someone has taken their spoon from, say, the guacamole and then put it into something like the pasta dish or the quiche or whatever it is that has gluten in it. It's just not worth it. So make sure that you don't go hungry by getting a really good plate first. Oh yes, and Naomi's saying no double dipping. Oh, someone took some flatbread once in, and there was this gorgeous dish that had taken ages to make, and just dunked it in there. I have to say, I don't know which bothered me more, the fact that I then couldn't eat it, or the fact that they had such bad manners. I'm really hot on good manners, and that means using separate knives for everything. And this brings me on to butter, because butter seems to be the staple of so many different things that you might eat at Christmas. Vegan butter, whatever butter it is you're using. The number of times I go to somebody else's house and they open up the lid to the butter or the margarine and you see crumbs in there, you think, oh, ugh. There are two ways to deal with this. You can get a butter sharpener, and this sounds weird, it's a grater, and basically you put the butter inside and you screw the lid on top, and when you turn the lid, little worms of butter come off and you can just scrape them off with your knife. Look that up online if you want. I'm not sure about that. On two reasons. Firstly, I'm not sure that I want shavings of butter, and secondly, if they're taking a crummy knife to the top, there's still that risk of cross-contamination. So what I do now is I've switched to olive oil. In fact, I've switched to most condiments of mine being squeezy or pourry, because you can't pourry, you know what I mean, being pourable, because then no one can shove a knife in there. They can't cross-contaminate. So when you've got mayonnaise, you just squeeze some out. If you want honey, squeeze it out. Same with mustard. And if we're going for oil, then just make sure you can drizzle oil on the top, and then you're safe. And actually, having olive oil instead of butter supposedly has the benefits of that Mediterranean diet, you know, that we all know people do so well in the Med. Do we know that? I know that. I hope you do too. Naomi's nodding. And it tastes amazing. And I think that's the key to getting Christmas right and long-term eating right, is saying, okay, there might be a risk with this particular product, whatever it is, when I'm at somebody else's house. So instead of having that, I will have something else that is just as much of a treat, but I know won't cause me issues. I think that's key to that. So we've talked about buffets, we've talked about that amazing just roll pastry. The thing that I think is really important whenever I eat out or whenever I go to somebody else's house is not to think, but I really wanted lasagna or whatever it might be, to think about what will keep me safe. That is my first thought. And if something is visibly gluten-free, then I think that can be really reassuring. Don't downplay how much anxiety you might have when you're eating at other people's houses. I wouldn't say lockdown has been great, but one of the things that lockdown has taught me has been that I have had so much less anxiety, because I know that all the food I'm eating is absolutely safe for me. It's prepared in my own kitchen. I get to buy it from the supermarket. I get to look at the ingredients. And as long as the person manufacturing doesn't recall that product for whatever reason, then I'm fine. And it has made me so much better mentally. And I would use that as a really, really good excuse. If you're worried about anybody's cooking, you can say to them, it really lowers my anxiety if you, and then insert whatever you need them to do. So if you cook in this particular way, if you could just do this separately for me, etc., etc. And people are so much more savvy about mental health these days that that may be key to you being safe this Christmas. So going back to being safe, if something is naturally gluten-free, like a jacket potato or new potatoes or carvings of beef or whatever it might be, then that to me is a great meal. You know, I don't mind having new potatoes instead of chips that might have been fried in something that's also had a battered cod in it. So having those new potatoes, having the beef, maybe having some steamed sprouts if you're a sprout fan, those are things that you can enjoy. And if you're still thinking, but what about the gravy? I bought some gravy granules the other day, as in gravy granules where you just pour boiling water in. That's a really safe way to do gravy. You get a jug, put a heap of granules in, boiling water, mix it up. That is your separate gravy and it's all for you. This brings me to if you have celiac children at Christmas. I have 2 children and they flit between 2 things. One, sometimes they love things being done specially for them and you give them a plate and they go, oh, wow, this is great. And at other times they want to be the same as everyone else. If you think it will make a better Christmas for them, having the same as everyone else, then you have to use that as an excuse to do everything gluten-free for everyone and just persuade everyone that they will have an amazing Christmas meal and talk them through all the things that you'll be doing. And by the way, cranberry sauce is always gluten and dairy free as far as I know. I've never come across one that isn't. So you can still have the cranberry sauce or you can make your own, and just get people salivating over all the things that you're going to be creating so that they're not saying, but where's the bread? Because nobody says, but where's the bread, if they're presented with an amazing feast that doesn't have bread in already. So visibly gluten-free, I've just written down here, new potatoes, bananas, not that you would want one for your lunch, but you know, that's a handy snack. Nuts, obviously, if there's a nut bowl and people have got nut crackers, and anything that's wrapped and sealed and you can see the ingredients on the back, that's great because then you absolutely know nothing's got in. Just make sure the person knows not to undo it and put it onto a plate, just to give you the wrapped and sealed goods. And my kids love having wrapped and sealed goods. And the first thing they'll say is, can you open it? Can you open it? And they sit down and they hunt inside for the things that they've been given. And there is so much available at the supermarkets these days. Now, one thing I want to talk about are presents at Christmas and a little bit of a warning, because somebody gave me a few Christmases ago a lovely little set of jars. There were 3 of them. This is one of them. I don't know, this jam and marmalade keeps for some time, so it must have been in the last 2 years, but it feels like it was ages ago. And they were beautiful and they had these little toppers and so on. And I thought, oh, wonderful. And I noticed on the back that each of them contained butter. So they had dairy in. Now, I don't know about you, but with a jam or a marmalade, I automatically assume that it will just be fruit and whatever sugar you might have used, whatever type of sugar that is, lemon juice or pectin, and that's it. And yet they used, and I'd seen that a few years ago. I knew someone was famous for her strawberry butter jam. And I remember thinking, what does that mean? And of course it contains butter. So just be careful if people do give you these little trinkets. It is illegal these days not to have an ingredients list with allergens contained on the back. So just double check those because that's really important. So we have been through, we haven't been through drinks. This is really important because things have changed in the last few years. It used to be that you could have any wine, any cider, any spirit. And apart from some, there was an urban myth about a spiced rum that contained gluten. I've never come across it. That said, just be careful. Obviously, you can still have wine, cider, and spirits, but you can also have non-alcoholic gins. And I've got one in the cupboard. It's called Salino, and it is fantastic. Doesn't contain any sugar. It has wonderful things like juniper berries in it and so on. It's very low calorie, if you're wondering. Mix it with a tonic and a slice of lemon, ice and a slice, and it's delicious. And I don't know about you, I don't always want to drink, but the alternative of just having orange juice after orange juice, or worse, a water, it's just not that's not right at Christmas, but if you get one of these non-alcoholic gins, oh, it's called Salino. So Catherine, who's just asked what's the non-alcoholic gin, there are a number that you can get if you go online and you put in non-alcoholic gin. Salino, C-A-L-E-N-O. Oh yes, Seedlip, someone's saying Seedlip. I've not tried that one, but it is supposed to be really good. So those are ones to get. You can buy them in most supermarkets, and it lasts as long as a bottle of gin, depending on how quickly you like to get through them. But it's really worth investing in one of those, particularly if you have guests who are driving back somewhere. You know, that's a really nice gift to give to them. So those are the drinks you can have. Make sure you don't automatically assume that all carbonated drinks are okay for you. There's definitely, it used to be Fanta. I don't know if Fanta still is like this. You may want to avoid it because of the sugar, but there was definitely an orange-based one that had wheat in it you need to avoid. So be very careful with those. Don't have barley water. I went to a pub once and asked for a vodka and orange, and I assumed that was vodka and pure orange juice. And it was only later in the evening where I said to her, cool, this is a bit strong. She said, oh, I'll put a bit more water in for you. That I realised what she'd done, and she'd used orange barley water. This is no good for celiacs. Don't be drinking barley water. It's really important that you don't. So those are the different kinds of drinks that you can have. And obviously you can have any soda or tonic, because it's just water, basically carbonated, that you can have. The last few things I want to go over, firstly, are hampers. Hampers, such a lovely thing to give someone at Christmas. There is the Gluten-Free Hamper company. They're an obvious one to go to, and look for their vegan hamper to make sure that it is also dairy-free. Fortnum's last year did a gluten-free hamper, and this year they've dropped it and they've got a vegan-friendly hamper. And all I can say is they must have just decided that doing only gluten-free wasn't doing them as much business as doing vegan. And you know, vegans have done brilliantly in the last year, especially, but celiacs seem to be pushed to one side slightly. So just, you know, be savvy when you order your gluten-free hamper or when you're looking for one online. The other thing I would say is, if you have an elderly relative and they can't cook for themselves and you know that you can't get to them, whether that's because of lockdown or not, Wiltshire Farm Foods, big shout out to them. Not only do they have the easiest to navigate website, on the left-hand toolbar, you can click all the different things that you can't have. And if you click gluten and dairy free, you're not left with just one choice for Christmas. Loads of choices come up. You can get duck in plum sauce. That's pretty special for Christmas. So they're really worth going to. That's Wiltshire Farm Foods. So I'm just going to check on all the Christmas stuff that I've talked about. Oh, yes. One thing to bear in mind. You'll get so many people talking about your health at Christmas. And I think one day you can get away with doing whatever you want, as long as you're sticking to the gluten and dairy free, obviously. But if you're going to do more than one day away from your regular foods, there are things that you really need to remember. It's very fashionable to talk about vitamin D at the moment, and instead of rolling your eyes, just find yourself a gluten-free vitamin D tablet. I have been taking OsteoCare, that also contains calcium. Celiacs need to have more calcium than, if you will, normal people. You need to have around 1,000 milligrams instead of 750. So taking 1 or 2 of those tablets every day is important. And it also contains magnesium, which is supposed to be good for fighting fatigue. And zinc. And zinc is important. I'm rather embarrassed to admit that I went to an osteopath last year, and she took one look at me and she said, you need to get more zinc. And I was like, how do you know this? She said, because you've got cracked heels. It's a bit embarrassing. So not only do I make sure I get enough zinc these days, I also moisturize my heels just to make sure that osteopath is happy, and obviously that I'm feeling as well as possible. When you head over to my Instagram channel, you will see a lot about exercise in there. And this is particularly important for celiacs. When I first turned celiac, there was a lot of talk with Coeliac UK about preventing osteoporosis. And one of the ways to do this is to make sure you're getting enough weight-bearing exercise. It's also important to get enough calcium. And at Christmas, it can be really easy, particularly when the weather is so cold or windy. I don't know which I least like, windy, cold or rainy, but all of those things, is not to get out the house. If you really can't bear getting out of the house, then you need to get yourself an online subscription. You can do the free ones on YouTube, or you can do ones like Beachbody, where you're just able to do either from your phone or from your TV set or from a DVD, a workout. It's really important. Even if you just do 30 minutes, choose something you love. I love Yoga by Cassandra. She's got over 1 million followers on YouTube. She's amazing. I really like doing 21 Day Fix Extreme. Please check with your doctor first what is suitable for you. But I refuse to accept that there comes a time in your life when you can't do this really anymore. Even my mum in her 70s could easily do a workout. If it meant sitting down, she could still do that. She can still beetle around. I am a qualified aerobics instructor, and I once went to a care home and taught them chair aerobics. Just moving more, even if it's just clapping your hands side to side, just getting your body going is really important, especially for your digestion. Doing some yoga in particular, maybe Pilates as well. You can do particular exercises for your core. Oxygen magazine online has some very good tips for the digestive exercises. All of those are suitable any age you are. Some of them involve lying down on the floor and simply twisting your knees. So as long as you're taking care and you've got the okay from your doctor, those things are really worth doing, particularly if you have been overindulged, as many of us do at Christmas. And just make sure that you are looking after yourself. Because as I say, one day or maybe even a few days of eating foods that you might not normally, you can get away with as long as you are taking care of your health. So think of it as fueling your body for the things that you want your body to be capable of doing. I'm in my mid-40s and I'm probably healthier now, thanks to an amazing PT I met last year with the tips he gave me, than I have ever been in my life. So it is really, really important that you look after your health as well. And if you've got a dog, great excuse to go out for a big walk with the dog. You might decide to play an indoor activity game, putting your vase of flowers or your poinsettia aside to make sure that that doesn't get broken, and just having fun with the family. If you've got small kids, they'll keep you active. And so there are lots of ways to make sure that you're looking after your health. So Naomi, I've noticed a number of questions coming up on my screen. I've been trying to answer those at the same time as talking to you all about Christmas and making sure it's dairy and gluten-free. Have we any questions left?
I'm pretty sure you've answered all the questions that come through, actually, Ali. You're an absolute font of information. It's amazing. And I just wanted to go back to your hamper suggestions, because I just think food is a really wonderful gift. And whether you're giving to a celiac or whether it's you're requesting lovely food things for yourself, do you have anything that you would like in your dream hamper?
Oh, yes, I would. I want everything. Now, there's one thing about me that is a bit different from most celiacs, and that's that I can't have oats. It's really annoying, but I also need things to be oat-free. So my dream hamper would be actually from Australia, because I went there a few years ago and the Australians do not consider oats of any kind to be gluten-free. So if you go to their gluten-free aisle, you can have the lot. And I basically wanted to put my trolley at the end of the aisle, go to the other end and just sweep my hand across and have every biscuit, cake, crisp going. So yeah, an Australian hamper. They had some amazing chocolate bites of some kind. If anyone from Australia is watching, even though it might be about 3 in the morning, please tell me what they're called, because you can't get them. They're called something like koala bites or something suitably Australian. And I just thought they were amazing. So if I can have those in my hamper, please. Anything with chocolate. Anyone who follows me on my Instagram knows that I eat chocolate every single day. Cacao nibs. If you could just stuff my hamper with lots of sweet treats like that, that would make my day.
That sounds amazing. There are a couple of chocolate producers on the Free From Marketplace. If you've had a look, if you came to this presentation through the website, go back there. Chocolatiha and
Enjoy it.
Say that again.
Sorry to interrupt you. Enjoy with an exclamation mark. They do chocolate buttons, they do slabs of chocolate. Last time I was on here, I was cooking with their chocolate. It just, yeah, divine.
So yeah, just nice to have real chocolate, isn't it? Because chocolate is essentially a health food. I mean, I include it as a separate food group.
No, I agree with you. I think it's essential every day to give yourself a treat of some kind. And for me, I've already had some cacao nibs and cacao powder today in a chocolate protein pudding I had as my second breakfast this morning, because I do like to eat a lot of food.
Well, you exercise a lot, don't you? So you're using it.
I do, but for the first time in my life, in the last year, I've looked at things very differently. Instead of thinking, oh, I need to exercise because I ate this, I don't look at it. I look at it as training and fuel. So I love eating, and I use that separately from the training. The training for me is about feeling good. I've never felt so good in my life. I got rid of my IBS pretty much through exercise alone, but by being consistent and by doing those digestive exercises that I mentioned earlier.
Fantastic. And also the endorphins that you get from exercise really particularly help with IBS, don't they? Because it's so mediated by the stress response. And so if you can do anything to mitigate that, I was thinking about that for people who are suffering with IBS. A lot of your tips are going to really help to just take the edge off the anxiety that you might feel around Christmas. Do you have any tips for Fodmap friendly people at Christmas?
So Fodmap is a really interesting one because you can go down the Fodmap route if you wish, but there are a couple of myths about Fodmap. Firstly, that Fodmap is the only way for some people with IBS, and secondly, that Fodmap has to be done forever. Fodmap is actually meant only to be done for a specific amount of time, and then you reintroduce the foods that previously you'd eliminated on the Fodmap diet. And by the way, Fodmap, for anyone who's watching and goes, what's that mean? It means fermentable oligo monosaccharides and polyols. Ugh, mouthful. The alternative to Fodmap is to try hypnotherapy. Now, you might be thinking that's a bit woo-woo, but think about this. Which would you prefer? Do you want to cut out certain foods, or would you like to try hypnotherapy? So if you are time poor but cash rich, go down the hypnotherapy route. I have a wonderful friend called Ali Rogers. She does hypnotherapy for IBS specifically. So just go to her Ali Rogers hypnotherapy. She does lots of Zoom calls. If you want to go down the Fodmap route, then you have to do it with a registered dietitian. You can't just look at a Fodmap diet and go, oh, I can have green bananas, but not ripe bananas, because invariably you will either get it wrong, as is so easy to do when you first start doing a gluten-free diet when you're celiac, or you will think that you can't have something when you actually can. So I think it's really important to work with a registered dietitian, or to be working, or whoever it is your doctor has recommended to you, or to try the hypnotherapy route, and to know that it doesn't happen instantaneously. Just because you've been doing a diet for 3 days or even 3 weeks doesn't mean you will suddenly be better. But do know, if you want the reassurance, that when you continue, when you're consistent with something, whatever it may be, eventually you will notice changes. So the changes for me, I wasn't trying to get rid of my IBS. I didn't realize how bad my IBS had become. And if you're wondering, I couldn't do the top button on my jeans for very long. I had a hot water bottle on my stomach every night where I would burn a raw red patch into my stomach because that was better than the pain from IBS. I went from that to being able to wear jeans normally and wearing a pair now, and basically pretty much eliminating it. So Naomi, you're absolutely right about the stress and anxiety, and that's another reason at Christmas to think ahead and think, right, person X is, I know they're going to push my buttons, so how can I handle this beforehand so that I don't get that anxiety? And if you really are going to get that anxiety, go and do some yoga with Cassandra. She has some 10-minute videos where if you're suffering from fatigue or IBS anxiety issues and so on, within 10 minutes, you can be a new person.
Fantastic. I just want to say, because time is running out, unfortunately, we need to crack on, that you have been so amazing, so many tips, a lot of things for people to take away. I'm sure they'll be doing amazing buffets. I would say my top tip would be prepare in advance and fill your freezer with cranberry sauce and all sorts of things that you've made yourself, so that you not only know that it's safe, but you know that it's full of goodness, and that actually it's going to be full of flavour and goodness, and everyone will be delighted to eat it, whether it's gluten-free or not. I'm absolutely with you on the fact that if you provide delicious food, nobody cares whether it's got gluten in. They just want to eat well, they want to eat good food, and they want your company.
I agree. And and I would say when you go to my website, lifeonaricecake.com, you'll see loads of similar tips on there. Subscribe to the website and you will get those tips in advance of everyone else. And you'll also, you mentioned my competition that's coming up. Subscribe before Wednesday and you will be the first to hear about my special Christmas competition. That's really important. So go to www.lifeonaricecake.com and you will see on the homepage, the subscribe page. It's really easy. You just put your email address in. That's it. And it's
good. Oh, fantastic. Well, head over there. But before you do, check out all the hamper ingredients so that you can put together your own delicious hampers on the Free From marketplace. There are so many amazing producers there, all free from gluten, dairy and refined sugar. I've got my eye on the Christmas pudding brownies.
I saw those earlier. They look amazing.
Yeah, super cute. Anything with chocolate gets my vote. And so we can find you on Instagram, Ali, and also on YouTube. And you're running your competition, so get over there and sign up for that. And just want to say thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and thank you, Ali, for giving such a wonderful presentation.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, have a great weekend. We'll see you later for your baking.
You'll see me baking later. Oh yes, go to my Instagram channel and I have put the ingredients you'll need if you want to bake along at the same time. Trust me, these are two very, very delicious recipes. And if you don't go out and buy those ingredients now, you will kick yourself later because you will want to eat from the screen. It is the best turkey I have ever tasted, made with flatbreads. That's the first recipe.
Fantastic, great. Well, we look forward to it. All right. Okay, we'll see you all there later.